The rain was merciless that night, a howling beast tearing through our quiet neighborhood, pounding rooftops like a drum roll of doom. I sat by the window, the world outside a blur of gray, my coffee gone cold. That's when the door slammed open, and my sister, Emily, staggered in, soaked to the bone, her eyes wide with something darker than fear humiliation, raw and jagged. Her clothes clung to her like a cruel second skin, and as she collapsed onto the couch, her voice broke, barely a whisper against the storm's roar. Two men, claiming to be HOA cops, had cornered her on our street. In the pouring rain, they'd forced her to strip, layer by layer, under the flimsy excuse of checking for tattoos. It wasn't just the cold that made her shiver. It was the violation, the audacity of their fake badges and smug grins. I felt my blood boil, a fire igniting in my chest that no storm could douse. Emily's story wasn't just a personal wound, it was an assault on everything we thought our community stood for. Our HOA, usually a petty nuisance with its parking fines and mailbox rules, had morphed into something sinister, a stage for these imposters to wield power they didn't have. As Emily spoke, her voice trembling, I saw the faces she described arrogant, laughing, pointing as she stood vulnerable in the downpour. It was a sick game, a twisted power trip cloaked in fake authority. Our neighborhood, once a cozy grid of familiar faces, now felt like a stranger's territory, tainted by distrust. The silence after her story was heavy, broken only by the rain's relentless patter. Anger simmered in me, but so did disbelief. How could this happen here, in our safe little haven? I couldn't shake the image of Emily, stripped of her dignity, and it fueled a resolve that grew sharper with every passing minute. This wasn't just about her, it was about all of us, our trust betrayed by wolves in HOA uniforms. Word of Emily's ordeal spread like wildfire, and the neighborhood buzzed with outrage. Stories poured in. Old Mr. Thompson forced to open his garage for a security check. The young couple down the street grilled over a made-up zoning violation. A single mom pressured into letting these creeps inspect her home. Each tale was a variation on the same theme: abuse dressed up as oversight. The HOA, once a background annoyance, became the VY lane in every whispered conversation. Neighbors who'd once swapped recipes now traded stories of injustice, their voices rising with a fury that matched the storm. For Emily, the violation cut deep, a scar on her sense of safety. I saw it in her eyes, the way she flinched at sudden noises, and it stoked my determination to make this right. My years as a cop had taught me one thing: justice isn't just served, it's seen. These fake cops had exploited our trust, turning our community's rules into weapons. I wasn't about to let that stand. Days passed, and I kept watch, my anger a quiet ember waiting for a spark. The storm that night was different, alive, electric, as if it knew what was coming. Lightning slashed the sky, and in its fleeting glow, I spotted them. Two figures slinking through the mist, their fake uniforms clinging to their frames like a bad lie. My heart pounded, a drumbeat of righteous fury, as I slipped from the shadows of an old oak, its branches whispering encouragement. The rain soaked my jeans, but it felt right, a cold edge to my resolve. I stepped into the open, my voice steady despite the thunder. "Enough games," I said, each word challenge. "You think you run this place? Let's see you without your costumes." Their smirks faltered, replaced by unease as I closed the distance. In a burst of pent-up rage, I lunged. The fight was chaos, fists, and rain, and raw adrenaline. I tore their uniforms off, VYing them sprawled on the wet pavement, their bare skin a stark contrast to their false authority. My own shirt clung to me, soaked through, but it felt like armor in this storm of reckoning. Thunder roared, nature cheering me on as I pinned them down, their bravado washed away by the rain. Neighbors emerged, drawn by the commotion, their umbrellas bobbing like lanterns in the dark. They saw the imposters shirtless and defeated, and something shifted. Fear gave way to defiance. Mrs. Larson, who'd lived through decades of neighborhood gossip, stood with her granddaughter, her eyes blazing with a fire I'd never seen. She'd told stories of these creeps' petty reprimands, but now she stood tall, a pillar of strength. The crowd grew, a chorus of whispers turning into cheers, the rain a soundtrack to our rebellion. Word of the confrontation raced through the streets, each house alive with the hum of justice. We weren't just spectators. We were a force, united against the tyranny that had crept into our lives. The rain kept falling, but it felt different now, like it was washing away the stains of fear and shame. We stood together, our voices weaving a tapestry of shared outrage and triumph, a community reborn in the storm's embrace. Then came the truth, piece by ugly piece. The imposters, Carl and Mitch, weren't random thugs. They were former builders, once tied to the HOA's expansion projects, until a bitter fallout over contracts and unpaid dues left them broke and vengeful. Their fake badges and forged documents were a twisted bid for control, a way to relive the power they'd lost. They hadn't stolen money, just dignity, ours and theirs. The HOA board squirmed under the spotlight, their oversight failures exposed. How'd they miss this? Who let these grudges fester into public scandal? The police arrived days later, their cruisers cutting through the gloom, lights flashing like a promise kept. Carl and Mitch stood by their beat-up van, their cockiness gone, just two men drowning in their own humiliation. The crowd watched, a mix of relief and rage, as they were cuffed and led away. This wasn't just about them, Anna Maria. It was about the HOA's unchecked power, a system that had let these imposters thrive. The media swarmed, cameras capturing a story that resonated far beyond our streets. A community fed up, fighting back. In the weeks that followed, we didn't just rebuild, we reimagined. Meetings became open forums, buzzing with ideas for a fairer HOA. Neighbors who'd once kept to themselves now led the charge, rewriting bylaws and demanding transparency. Emily, still healing, found her voice, her story a rallying cry for change. Our streets, once heavy with suspicion, hummed with purpose. Laughter returned, louder than before, as we stitched our community back together, stronger, fiercer. For Emily and me, this was personal. Standing among neighbors who'd become family, I felt the weight of our VY tore, not just justice for her, but for all of us. The HOA's shadow had shrunk, its tyranny replaced by a spirit of collaboration. Moonlight bathed our streets now, gentle where the storm had been fierce, and I knew we'd done more than win a fight. We'd reclaimed our home, our dignity, our right to live without fear. But the story doesn't end here. What would you do if this happened in your neighborhood? Would you confront the imposters yourself, or wait for the system to fix itself? Should HOAs have this much power, or are they just bullies in official clothing? Drop your thoughts below. Hit that like button if this story fired you up, and subscribe for more tales of justice and defiance. Let's keep this conversation going, because no one should face a storm alone.